There is no chaos, only patterns we fail to see. This is the Wren Files. It was the wrong letter on the wrong day from a woman who was already dead. I first heard of it from Quinn, who, despite a career of hardened cynicism, sounded unnerved on the phone. "You ever seen a corpse send mail, Wren?" The deceased was Mrs. Agatha Thornwell, age 71. Retired teacher, no children, lived alone. She was found on the floor of her sitting room on Monday morning by the postman who noticed her milk still out from Saturday. Coroner's report. Time of death between 5 and 6 a.m. Monday. Cause: heart failure, clean, peaceful. But the letter. It arrived at the Croydon Gazette on Tuesday afternoon, sealed in one of Agatha's monogrammed envelopes. Stamped and dated that same morning, clear as the Queen's crest. Inside, a handwritten letter. Ink still fresh. If anything happens to me, it was not natural. I made mistakes long ago. They've come back. Please, let someone know I was afraid. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakably hers. Quinn showed it to me in the station's back office, away from the interns and the noise. "You're thinking forgery?" I asked. "I'm thinking witchcraft," he muttered, then added, "but yes, mostly forgery." I held the letter up to the light. Good stationery. Heavy paper. No hesitation in the strokes. Whoever wrote this wanted us to believe it came from the dead, or worse, didn't realize she was supposed to be dead. I asked who had access to her home. "Only the neighbour Mrs. Lillian Grace," Quinn said. "She's the one who called it in." June and I headed to Bellflower Crescent that same afternoon. A row of semi-detached houses, all alike, but one now oddly still. The Thornwell residence had its curtains drawn and front door locked. The milk bottle still stood, sweating in the autumn sun. Mrs. Grace was in her garden next door, trimming roses with an unnecessary aggression. She spoke without looking up. "Of course I had a key. We've lived side by side for 20 years. "Any idea who could have sent the letter?" I asked. She paused. "That old woman hadn't written a letter in 5 years. Said her hands didn't like the cold any more. She still had monogrammed stationery." "She had airs," Grace snorted. "Thought it made her special." June leaned in politely. "Did she have visitors recently?" Grace gave a short laugh. "Only pigeons and the paper boy." Then her tone shifted. "She got one phone call last Friday, took it in the hallway, looked shaken after. Do you know who called?" She wouldn't say, but I heard her whisper the name Margot. Back at the office, June started digging. There's no record of a Margot in any Thornwell relative lists. No niece, no cousin, no friend listed in the will. "Maybe not a real name," I suggested. Then she found it. An old missing persons report from 1959. A child named Margot Maywell, age 9, last seen outside St. Bertram's Children's Home. She vanished the same year. Agatha left her teaching post. June said. "And where was she teaching?" I asked. June looked up. "St. Bertram's." We returned to the house with a warrant this time. The place still smelled of tea and lavender, a time capsule dressed in doilies. Agatha's study was on the first floor, Neat, airless. Inside her desk, under a tray of unpaid bills, we found a stack of old letters tied with red ribbon. They were all addressed to one name. Dearest M. The letters weren't dramatic. No confessions, no crimes, just apologies. You must believe I only wanted to help. They wouldn't have treated you kindly there. I kept the scarf. Still smells of violets. All signed the same. You're Miss Thornwell. We showed them to Quinn. Could have been a protective thing, he muttered. Teacher gets too close, takes the kid in, hides her from something. Or someone, I added. June tapped the edge of a letter. She never mailed these. She kept them here for decades. That meant either guilt or hope. We needed someone who remembered 1959. That led us to Mr. Bernard Rowe, age 83, former groundskeeper at St. Bertram's. He met us in a sunlit room that smelled of polish and menthol rub. I remember Agatha, he said. Came every morning in that blue coat of hers. Did she ever leave with one of the girls? I asked. He blinked, then nodded. One night, big storm, no one was meant to go out, but she wrapped one of the girls in a blanket and slipped through the side gate. Name of the girl? He paused again. I think Margot. The girl had never been seen again. Police had interviewed staff, assumed runaway. Agatha resigned 2 weeks later and moved to Croydon. Case was marked as open but inactive ever since. Until now. At the Town Hall archives, June found something odd. Agatha's death certificate was processed Monday afternoon, but it was accompanied by a revised passport application from 2 weeks earlier. Someone had been trying to travel. The application had no photograph. But the name listed? Margaret Thornwell. She tried to assume Agatha's name? June asked. Or always had it, I said. The neighbour, Mrs. Grace, didn't want to see us again. But she opened the door when I mentioned a name. Margaret. Her lips pressed thin. She was here, she said, about a month ago. Said she was Agatha's cousin. Looked about 50, not 70. And Agatha? Didn't want her to stay. I heard shouting. Next day, Margaret was gone. And Agatha? Started locking the door. We checked Agatha's bank records. Large withdrawal, £500 the week before her death. Then nothing. Inside her desk, we found a train stub to Dover tucked inside a book of nursery rhymes. It was dated Monday morning. You're thinking what I'm thinking? June asked. I nodded. Agatha was dead in her home by 6 a.m., but someone took a train under her name later that morning. And someone mailed a letter the next day. Someone with her stationery. Her handwriting. Her secrets. We returned to the mortuary. The body had already been cremated. No autopsy had been ordered. The death looked natural. But the teeth had been charted, and one note in the file stood out. Mild misalignment on upper left incisor, consistent with fall at young age. We checked school records. Margot Maywell's dental file from St. Bertram's. Same anomaly. Wren's law. The dead don't lie. But sometimes the living use them to disappear. The woman who died in that house wasn't Agatha Thornwell. She was Margot. She had lived under Agatha's name since 1959 for protection, for escape, maybe for guilt. The real Agatha had died long ago, or disappeared after switching places. But that raised the real question. If the woman in the grave was Margot, where was Agatha now? She was staying at a boarding house near the coast. Name on the ledger: Margaret Thornwell. Paid in cash. No luggage, just a handbag and a book of poems by Emily Dickinson. June and I found her sipping tea alone in the dining hall. She looked up and said calmly, "I knew someone would come." Her hair was dyed darker than in the old staff photos. She wore no rings, but on her wrist a faint scar, half-moon shaped, matching the one in Agatha's teacher ID from decades ago. "I'm not here to arrest you," I said. "Of course not," she replied. "That would be rather pointless now." We spoke in the drawing-room. Quiet. Still. No clock ticking. Just wind outside, trying to remember the sea. She began without prompt. Her name was Margot, and she was never meant to suffer. Agatha had taken Margot from the orphanage one night after overhearing that the girl was to be transferred to a place with fewer questions. "She was clever, that girl," she said. "Too clever. Asked too much." Agatha took her in. Lied on forms. Claimed kinship. She became Miss Thornwell, aunt and guardian. But the lie had weight. They would have taken her back, and I couldn't let them. So one day Agatha vanished. And Margot became Agatha. Not perfectly, but carefully. Enough to live quietly, enough to avoid the past. She took my name, my habits, even my tea. She smiled faintly. She never got used to gardening, though. Said worms gave her judgmental looks. I asked the question that had lingered from the start. "Why now? Why come back?" The smile faded. She was dying. Knew it. Wanted to put things in order. Margot asked to meet the real Agatha after all those years. They did. Tea and violets and apologies. But the visit rattled them both. She told me she had written a letter, Agatha said. A goodbye, a warning, for anyone to know she was afraid. "She died the next day," I said. Agatha nodded. "She had a seizure. Early morning I found her by the fire." "And you didn't call for help?" She looked away. She was already cold. Then came the part most wouldn't understand, but Wren did. "She asked me to leave her as me," Agatha whispered. "To let her name die. That's why she forged the passport. Why she took the train. Why she mailed the letter posthumous protection, in a way. She wanted someone to notice," Agatha said. "Not the world, just someone." "And what about you?" I asked. "What do you want?" She took a deep breath. "Anonymity. A quiet place. A name I can grow into." "And if I told the police?" they'd find a woman who has no records, no crime, and no fingerprints in any file." She smiled again. "You can't arrest a ghost." I left her there. June was waiting outside with a half-raised eyebrow. "Well?" she asked. "She's not running," I said. "She already stopped." The newspaper printed a small correction the next week. The letter was described as unverified. No questions followed. Somewhere on the coast, a woman walked under the name of another, and the world, as it does, kept moving. A month later, I received a parcel. No return address. Inside, a scarf, smelling faintly of violets, and a note. For the girl who asked too many questions, and the man who kept asking anyway.